He co-founded the Black Panther Party, a movement that fought for black empowerment and against police brutality. Here's why Huey P. Newton's life is both revolutionary and controversial. So let's get into his story. Let's go. So Huey Percy Newton was born on February 17th of 1942 in Monroe, Louisiana, into a poor African-American family. And his early life was shaped by the racial segregation and also the systemic discrimination that were rampant in the South during the 1940s and 50s. Now, Newton's family moved to Oakland, California when he was a young child. They were seeking better opportunities in an urban North. But even in California, Newton was not immune to the racial tensions that were sweeping the United States. Growing up in Oakland, Newton became acutely aware of the stark inequalities faced by black Americans, particularly in terms of police brutality. Police violence against black communities was rampant, and Newton's own experiences with law enforcement were deeply troubling. By the time he reached high school, Newton had become increasingly political, questioning the injustices around him, and also developing a sense of activism that would define his life. Newton attended Merritt College in Oakland, and there he became involved in political organizing. It was there that he met Bobby Seale, and together they co-founded the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense in 1966. The party was born out of the necessity to protect black communities from police violence and systemic oppression. The Black Panthers were deeply influenced by revolutionary Marxist ideologies and sought to address not only police brutality, but also the broader issues of poverty, inequality, and lack of access to basic rights for black people. The Black Panther Party, with its distinctive black berets and leather jackets, became an iconic symbol of black empowerment. The party's motto, "Power to the People," captured their call for political and economic self-determination for African Americans. Now, Newton and Seale believed that the black community had the right to defend itself from police violence by any means necessary, including armed self-defense. The party began organizing patrols to monitor police activity, particularly in Oakland, where they would follow police officers and ensure that they did not abuse their power. Now, Newton's leadership and his intellectual rigor were key to the Black Panther Party's growth. He was deeply influenced by Marxist, socialist, and revolutionary ideas, and his speeches and his writings made him a powerful advocate for black liberation. His book, Revolutionary Suicide, published in 1973, chronicled his life and his philosophy. Newton argued that the black community needed to take control of its destiny through direct action, and that the American system was fundamentally unjust to African Americans. But as the Black Panther Party grew in its influence, so did its conflicts with law enforcement and government agencies. And the party's armed patrols, their public calls for revolution, and their defiance of the status quo drew the attention of the FBI and local police. The FBI, under its COINTELPRO program, actively sought to infiltrate and disrupt the Black Panther Party, seeing it as a threat to national security. Newton himself was targeted by law enforcement, facing multiple arrests and charges, including a high-profile incident in 1968 where he was accused of the murder of a police officer. Now, Newton's life became marked by both his revolutionary leadership and his legal troubles. In 1967, he was arrested for the killing of Officer John Frey during a shootout between police and the Panthers in Oakland. Now, Newton was convicted of manslaughter, but his supporters argued that the trial was politically motivated. And in 1971, after serving several years in prison, Newton was released on bail, having gained substantial public support. His conviction was eventually overturned, but his time in prison had taken a toll on his health and also his leadership in the party. Now, despite the legal and physical challenges he faced, Newton remained committed to the Black Panther Party's mission. However, by the early 1970s, the party was increasingly fractured. Internal disputes, government surveillance, and the changing political climate led to the decline of the Black Panther Party's influence. Newton, while still committed to the cause, faced growing tensions with other leaders within the party. His drug use, legal troubles, and increasingly erratic behavior further distanced himself from earlier supporters. In the years that followed, Newton's life became a tragic reflection of the struggles he had endured. He was involved in several controversies, including the alleged abuse of power within the party and his descent into drug addiction. Still, his influence as a revolutionary leader remained strong. His work in the Black Panther Party inspired generations of activists, particularly in the fight for black rights and against police brutality. Even after the decline of the Black Panthers, his ideas about self-defense and empowerment continued to resonate in movements for racial justice. On August 22, 1989, Huey P. Newton was tragically killed in Oakland at the age of 47. He was shot and killed by Tyrone Robinson, a man with whom he had been involved in a dispute over a drug deal. Newton's death marked the end of an era for the Black Panther Party and the revolutionary movements of the 1960s and 70s. Why does his story matter? Why does Huey Newton's story matter? Well, it matters because he was a key figure in the fight for black empowerment during a time when racism and police violence were deeply entrenched in American society. His work with the Black Panther Party helped him shine a light on the systemic injustice faced by black Americans, particularly in terms of law enforcement and economic inequality. Newton's leadership, his intelligence, and commitment to revolution provided a model for later movements in the struggle for racial justice, even as his personal life became marred with, struggles with the law and addiction. His ideas about self-defense and black liberation remain influential, and his life is a reminder of the ongoing fight for civil rights and the need for self-determination in marginalized communities. Huey P. Newton's life was marked by revolutionary brilliance and also personal tragedy. He was a man who fought tirelessly for black empowerment and justice, but whose struggles and ultimate fate serve as a sobering reminder of the personal cost of revolution. If you learned anything new tonight, or you added to your depth of knowledge, I'm happy for you. If you wouldn't mind, like, comment, follow, share, question for more things you should know by being alive, because understanding figures like Huey P. Newton help us continue the fight for justice, equality, and human dignity. Thanks for watching.